Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I'm your co-host, Rich Maletto. You can find me on the Xbox machine at Fantasy Bosco, all spelled out. Joined, as always, by the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Sean Engel. You can find on X at SeanE247, Twitter, X, whatever the heck you want to call it. This is the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you by FantasyGuru.com and the Elite Plus Network, where you can find all sorts of wonderful content from Mind of Marsal and Jeff Mann's One Man's Opinion, along with the live stream, coaching streams we do, and everything else. It's all there. If you want any of our content above and beyond just racing and everything else, because, hey, Sean and I dabble in all sorts of stuff, head over to FantasyGuru.com. The 50 special, I understand, is off. It's not eligible, but I've been told if you still want our all-inclusive, all-in, everything above and beyond, everything on the website, reach out to support@fantasyguru.com. Tell them Jeff Mann sent you, and I hear they will hook you up with a promo. Otherwise, if you're interested in all of our content here covering NASCAR and you want more, you want NBA, NHL, hey, yes, I know the playoffs are here, but it's a 12-month package. Picks up right where leaves off. So you get all of next year too. MMA, PGA, all of NASCAR, racing, horse racing, and more. $39.99, $40, 12 months. You can't beat it. Less than $4 a month, man. Hop on, join us in the Discord. Let's chat racing. Let's chat anything you want. You want to talk sports? We're here for you. Sean, what is going on, man? How are you doing?
I am doing all right today, Rich. Just been going forth, taking care of business, both regarding NASCAR and even outside of NASCAR. Lot of stuff going on, and we got ourselves some road course racing this weekend, which definitely is a lot of stuff going on as well in the NASCAR sphere.
Hey, we're going left, we're going right. We don't do that all the time. I know some people have some opinions on we do it too much, we don't do it enough. I don't mind mixing it in here and there. I would like to get away from this 6-7 races a year this way, but hey, I haven't even counted what we're at for this year, but we haven't hit too many. The last road course I remember going to for the Cup Series was Coda.
That's the only one.
That's the only one. I thought, we have Watkins Glen, of course, will be coming up. Xfinity, I mean, they seem to be doing all sorts of road racing since they were at Portland last weekend, and now they're back at Sonoma, which, interestingly enough, this is only the second Xfinity Sonoma race ever.
Yeah, that's crazy to consider. They started actually going here very, very recently amidst a bunch of other schedule changes in order to kind of mingle the Xfinity and Cup series a little bit more together to make it a little bit easier on the teams travel-wise, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, they were already in Portland, right? So that's just kind of the Xfinity West Coast swing sort of thing. The trucks used to race here once in a great while. We've had about five or six, I think, different truck events. We haven't raced here a couple of years for the truck series. I'm all for the double ups. I'm used to having both series, all three series at the track. I don't mind, breaking it up. We don't need to have 3 races every week. The truck series doesn't need to be nearly as long as the Cup series. Neither does Xfinity for that matter. So, hey, I am a fan of Sonoma in general. I'd love to go out to wine country. This is a beautiful racetrack. It's a purposely built road course. We've had some great races here over the years, Sean.
Oh, that is definitely the case, just because Sonoma's had a history of some really great finishes before. I mean, we can't forget about the fact that this was Tony Stewart's last win came at Sonoma, when that memorable finish against Denny Hamlin, of course.
That was a fun race. Look, in all fairness, some of the best finishes we've seen, Watkins Glen and Sonoma, are near the top of the list. I mean, we've had a couple now at Darlington, right? But you go over NASCAR history, and it goes back. Ricky Rudd's win. I think, is that Riverside? Was that Sonoma? I get it confused. That's been mid-'80s at this point.
Yeah, there was the Ricky Rudd and Davey Allison incident at this track.
Yep. Earnhardt, Gordon had, quite the run here in wine country over the years. But it has. When we only did 2 or 3 road races a year, that was enough to wet my whistle, and I was good with it. So I don't mind doing this a few times. We're looking forward to it. And hey, we did get a taste of it last week in the Xfinity Series at Portland, right?
Yep.
Trucks and Comp were outside St. Louis there at Gateway, which I thought was a good show on both races, both the truck race and and the Cup race. I really did. It was tough to watch the trucks and Xfinity due to rain coming into play. I had 2 TVs on and one was muted, right? So it was kind of hit and miss what I was catching. But overall, for an intermediate track, it really does race more like a short track at times. And I thought it was, what I loved the most was strategy. The truck race was plenty exciting, but on the Cup Series side, strategy was everything. And we were getting to watch all sorts of different strategies play out. It was old school style, Sean. We don't really see that very often. I argue that the stage breaks take away some of the strategy plans. Joey Logano says I'm nuts. It helps it. I don't see it. I feel like we have way less strategy calls in races that we watch play out that way than we did 15 years ago. But I thought it was a fantastic show on Sunday.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Let's just get into our recaps there. And you know what? Let's flip the script a little bit and go into the Cup Series, since we're having Cup Series on the brain right now here, Rich. It was all very interesting race. There was a lot of strategy being played out. I thought the way that the cautions fell gave room for that strategy to come into play. And you know what, Rich? You could say we had some twists and turns in this race, with the twist ending there, because Austin Cindric out of nowhere ends up winning at Gateway and snapping an 85 race winless streak, while Ryan Blaney runs out of fuel on the final lap.
Well, and let's not forget that up until that point, it was the story of Christopher Bell catching Blaney. Bell had by far the fastest car at the end of the race, and it was obvious. And hat tip for Blaney, when there's 30 laps to go and he's got to hold off a faster car, he did it for 20 laps, Sean. I mean, he did all the right moves. He took away the high line. He carried the momentum. He made it difficult to pass. Hat tip to Bell for not using the door and the fender to move him. We've seen folks do that in the past. Now, with 2 laps to go, that may have changed, right? But, man, that was fun to see. And then you see Bell go by him, and you're thinking, shoot, that's the race. And then all of a sudden, you're like, wait a second. How did Ryan go right back by him? Then you hear on the radio, Bell's going, we're blowing up. We're losing a cylinder. As you pointed out off air, apparently they lost a valve spring. A broken valve spring was the culprit.
Yeah, according to Bob Pockrass, who interviewed Christopher Bell, Bell said that it was a broken valve spring within the car that was found, and they said that happened due to a random parts failure that they're still figuring out within the car overall, that basically took the engine power down and slowed the car. It made it feel like it was almost blowing up, and to be fair, maybe if the race got a little longer, it may have ended up blowing up.
Well, the other thing is you heard on the radio, they told Bell, quit shifting, right? Everybody was shifting at least in 1 and 2, not always in 3 and 4, but for sure in 1 and 2. He stopped shifting. Martin Truex was pushing him around the track, which was kind of fun to see. The whole discussion if that's legal or not and all this stuff that went with that. So I wonder if, maybe it didn't blow up because Bell did take care of it. I mean, for 10 laps, he nursed that motor instead of driving it like he could have, or, maybe should have, so to speak. But to somehow finish on a top 10, wow, especially when Blaney runs out of gas and comes home 24th, man. That stings.
That is a big heartbreaker right there. Crazy how that sort of stuff happens. And, Blaney, he was trying to discuss with his crew about what happened. They just did not get enough fuel into the car. And they never really figured it out until it happened.
Larry Mack, because they asked Larry Mack about it, and he said, look, it's all based on time, but we have the assumption that they got it full, or they got it, that fuel was running into the tank while they're timing it. We've seen them. It's gotten a lot better. After we went away from the catch can, there was many teams that really struggled with this fill system and getting the gas can in the nozzle in the hole right and making sure gas. I mean, I remember when we first went to this new fuel can, teams thought, gas is spewing out. They think it's full, only to find out they got no fuel in. So I'm guessing that in a rush, in the speed of a pit stop, they mistimed it, didn't get, what they thought was all the way in, or on a previous pit stop, they didn't pack it as full as they thought they did.
Yeah, it's true. But, there's other factors, too, that also was the difference with Austin Cindric, as mentioned. He did end up pitting 1 lap later than Blaney. And also, they did put an extra can of fuel into Cindric's last pit stop there, too. So he was covered either way, regardless of what was going to happen.
Makes you wonder if Blaney's team straight up miscalculated something.
Well, I also know, too, that Blaney was under the pressure to just get out faster just so he could have a gap on Christopher Bell in order to hold him off for longer, if need be.
Well, and like I said, timing, we need 8.5 seconds and they got 8.3. I mean, nobody's going to tell you what 0.2 is, but if that's the difference in half a gallon, that might have been the difference in him making finishing the race with fuel to spare, so to speak.
But they also just didn't think of the situation, especially after, Bell had his engine issues and was falling back. Blaney still had the ride in the front for about like a good 20 plus laps or so. He could have still saved a lap of fuel had he known sooner.
Had he known, right? So, but the Cup race really was fantastic in my opinion. I enjoyed seeing the strategy. We had a couple of standout finishes, right? Denny Hamlin came back to finish second. I'm sure he was ecstatic about that for where they were running.
That was
Tyler Reddick,
a quiet second place finish.
It was a very quiet second place. Joey Logano had a very quiet top 5, right? He was 5th. Austin Dillon. And look, Kyle Busch had a car. He had enough speed to hang out up front. I don't think he had enough speed to win, but he was probably a top 5 car. And as much as I love Larson, he's willing to do things and put the car on edge. And I don't think it was intentional, but I do blame Larson for what happened to Kyle Busch right there. And unfortunately, Kyle Larson got to continue and Kyle Busch didn't. But it was nice to see his teammate with a 6th place finish. That was the top Chevrolet, as you noted here for us.
Yeah, and the reason why I point that out, too, is because if you ended up placing a bet on Austin Dillon to be top Chevrolet, the odds, I'm sure, was going to be very, very, very deep.
Plus 3,000 probably or something like that.
We're talking maybe at least 100 to 1 or even deeper than that. At minimum, 100 to 1.
Carson Hocevar, 8th place, new best career finish in the Cup Series. Free square, Justin Haley, another top 10. Kyle Larson, the only Hendrick car in the top 10.
And in the last position of the top 10 at that, too. Right.
Ty Gibbs, 11th. Ross Chastain, who we were pushing, only had 12th, but he was inside the top 10 for a good part of the day. Chase Elliott was a bit of a disappointment. Buescher was a bit of a disappointment. They were 13th and 14th. Byron, 15th. Todd Gilliland, after the extension, a nice 16th place finish for him. Briscoe, Daniel Hemrick, another Rick Ware finish, 18th. God, for DFS, he has been quietly a sneaky play. You could almost use Hemrick and Haley and just go balls out with the rest of the lineup and see what happens.
Well, Hemrick's making use of that call-like equipment and just finishing with it.
Yes, he is. Zane Smith, 19th, Stenhouse, 20th, Daniel Suarez, 23rd. That was disappointing. Michael McDowell, I know, was very disappointed with his run because they were way faster than everybody in qualifying. Something like 3/10. It was insane. And they looked good in practice, and it just did not come together, man.
Yeah, this seems to be the case with McDowell a lot this season, where he has a lot of strong qualifying runs, but more often than not this season, he's just not get those finishes inside the top 10 to take advantage of that early speed. The handling's not been there sometimes. The speed just kind of goes away over the course of the car. The adjustments just haven't been there. Other drivers have just been taken over. It's just been something else with McDowell's season. And the crazy thing is that even though McDowell is considered the franchise driver, like the lead driver at front row, at this point, Todd Gilliland is ahead of him in points.
Well, not only that, McDowell's gone. We know he's lame duck. He's out at the end of the year. And what's crazy to me is he was rattling off these top 10s to start the season. Through the first month of the season, I was ignoring him. You were pushing him, and he just kept scoring finishes. And now it's the exact opposite. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here at front row, especially with all the speed McDowell's been showing. And Gilliland's been decent, but he's the guy he's better off in the points, like you said. And he's the guy with the multi-year contract, and McDowell isn't. So, well, let's move on to the truck race.
Yes.
I got to listen to myself, Sean. OGB Snacks. I'm glad he reads and listens to the words I type, because I overthink crap and pivot when I shouldn't. I said in the overview article, don't bet Heim early. Let's see if he has bad qualifying or practice and take advantage of some soft odds, because 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I said, I don't care what Heim looks like in practice or qualifying. He's a contender every single week. This team knows what changes they need to make. Take advantage of soft lines when they happen. OGB did it. I was like, I'm not really feeling it. I'm really feeling Majeski now. Hat tip OGB. Nice win. You shopped around, got the softer lines on Heim, and as Sean said, it was Heim time again. As Corey Heim, and he was, quite frankly, he was the truck to beat most of the race. I mean, I know Majeski swept stages 1 and 2, but Heim was one of the fastest trucks throughout the entire event.
That was the case, but he sure did take his time getting there to the point. It took him until the 3rd stage before he even sniffed the lead for the first time.
Yeah, but he was running around top 10, just kind of, like you said, taking his time, doing his thing. They kept adjusting on the truck. Majeski's going to get a win. It's going to happen. It's been a little bit ridiculous with the heartbreak for him at this point. Heim, Eckes, Sanchez, Majeski, 1 through 4. As you noted, that's 1 through 4 in the point standings. And Sean, I mean, you read the articles and go over it. Those are 4 names I talk about a lot. Majeski, not as much as the other 3, but there's a reason we talk about those guys a lot. And Majeski and the Thor Sport equipment's going to get there. Thor Sport's been a little behind to start the season, and they're starting to kind of come together, so it'll be there. Even though Majeski took his time, he still led the most laps. Heim took his time. He led the most laps. Majeski was next. Tanner Gray got some lead laps in. Ben
19.
Rhodes led some laps. That was good to see from Mr. Ben Rhodes. Nick Sanchez ran up front. Chase Purdy, we talked about him a little bit, and we're hoping to see a little bit of a turnaround. They've been kind of showing speed but fluttering out. He had a nice run on Saturday. Yep. Tyler Ankrum led some laps. God, they're missing a little something. At some point, mark my words, Ankrum's going to rattle off a bunch of top 5s in a row. Christian Eckes has been fast and leading. This is another race he led. Every race this year, he's led at least a lap. And good old Keith McGee led a lap.
Yeah, I'm thinking that was probably during a pit stop exchange, if I had to guess. I'm
pretty confident on that. Shout out to Lane Riggs. I said we did like Lane Riggs a little bit. This race is a little more like a short track than a intermediate or super speedway. It's his second top 5. His other top 5 was a short track race. I do like Lane Riggs as a talent, especially when we go short track racing. Chase Purdy, 6th, just missed out on the top 5. Ben Rhodes, 7th, a nice top 10. Stuart Friesen back in the top 10 at 8th. Andres Perez in his series debut. We like that truck. We talked about it.
Yeah, nice. That 7 truck.
It was nice. Shout out to Taco Todd. He threw Fenhouse in his lineup, and Fenhouse ended up with a 10th place finish. I did not see that.
And his series debut as well. We got 2 drivers making their debuts, both finished top 10.
And we weren't talking road course ringers here. This is an awkward, tough oval to drive. So nicely done by them. Tanner Gray came home just outside top 10 and 11th. Daniel Dye was right there. Ty Dillon, he's starting to get a little bit better. I'd be curious to see what Ty would do in some better equipment. Whether it was him or Di Benedetto last year, I'm not impressed with War Rackley as far as a speed standpoint.
Di Benedetto looked a little bit better than how Dillon's been running this season.
I would agree.
I will give credit to Di Benedetto with that.
I would agree. Dean Thompson, Tyler Ankin, 14th, 15th. Enfinger, man, did he let me down. And this is where you talked about cautions falling and the strategies. He got bit at the wrong time on a caution, trapped him in the back. He was running well to start the race. He was running in the top 5, top 7 most of the event. Timmy Hill with another nice finish. Look, I have no problem using Timmy Hill every week as my value guy. His pricing's, up near 6,000 now, but he basically moves up 5 to 10 spots every week. Qualifies near the 28th-ish. He's a top 20 driver, top 25. He's just kind of lock and load, 12 points, 15 points. Man, Lawless Allen always has some speed. He just burns me so much. But he had another nice finish. If you use Lawless Allen, you worked out really well this week. 2 weeks ago, not so much. Matt Crafton can't get out of his way. Another 20th place finish. Jake Garcia, 24th. Gross. Taylor Gray with some brake issues. Taylor Gray's had a little bit of a slump here, and I don't know if it's because he's doing so much Xfinity work or what, but it is what it is. But overall, I thought the truck race was decent. It was fun to see Heim kind of work his way through. I was really hoping Majeski was going to give him a run. At the end, he didn't. But, overall, decent day. Why don't you take us through the Xfinity race? Because I have a feeling you watched a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I ended up, when both of the races were on at the same time, I focused more on the Xfinity Series race compared to the Truck Series race, although I did check both of them out there, just to be sure. So, with the Xfinity race, the final result was that Shane Van Gisbergen took a win away from a dominant Justin Allgaier late at Portland there, Rich. Allgaier, he was the top driver. He basically had this race taken over once he got towards the front there. But SVG, man, he just was running the fastest and running the best, especially towards the end there. He was able to contend for the win, and he got just that, his first ever Xfinity Series win over at Portland, Rich.
Not shocked, and Allgaier didn't give it up easy. That was a fun last couple of laps to watch there. And I noted in the overview article, we're going road racing again. Don't necessarily, the way the odds have come out, it's a big boost to Ty Gibbs. I get, Cup driver stepping down. And he's been really good on the road courses when he raced Xfinity. And then it's Dinger and SVG. The odds on Mayer, on Allgaier, on Cole Custer, on Sheldon Creed are all near 1,000, plus 1,000 or more. I think that's out of line. Those guys are going to lead laps and be near the front. I wouldn't count them out. I really wouldn't. I would much rather take one of them at plus 900 or 1,000 than bet at, a Ty Gibbs at 250 or even I definitely am not feeling Dinger at 300. SVG, maybe. But I'll be curious because this is a much more technical track. I feel like this plays better to SVG than Portland did, but we'll see.
You mentioned about the Xfinity Series odds there too. Looking over it, you got a bunch of different interesting options on the board. You got Parker Kligerman at plus 1,800 there. Justin Allgaier, who we just mentioned was the dominant car over at Portland, he's plus 1,100. 11 to 1 odds.
Yep.
And then you mentioned about other cup drivers stepping down towards Xfinity. Why not John Hunter Nemechek at plus 3,000 there?
That's another one. And he's been good on the road courses in Xfinity too. I mean, I don't know that I would, for Gibbs to be plus 250 and Nemechek to be, 35 to 1, I'm not seeing that gap. They're going to be in similar equipment, same team, JGR. Do I think Gibbs is more likely to win? Yeah, but not by tenfold.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that Nemechek, he ran inside the top 10 for a little while there at one point and even led a lap in last year's Sonoma race in Xfinity.
Yes, he did.
We're getting away from the Portland point here, but let's just continue onward here. The race itself was also very chaotic as several different drivers experienced a sort of setback at one point or another, whether it was Allmendinger starting from the rear of the field to fourth. Sam Mayer ended up ruining a great run competing for the win by spinning late. Yeah. Anthony Alfredo, Sage Karam, Chandler Smith, Brandon Jones, and a bunch more. They all either went off course, lost tires, or just had some sort of issue behind them, Rich.
Yep. Look, Dale Jr. said this years ago. It's not that hard to be decent at road racing. You just have to stay on the track. And for some reason, that tends to be. And I tell you what, of all the tracks we go to, Sonoma probably has the most off-track driving we see of any of the venues that we road race at.
That is very true. And you know what? We saw that on display at Portland as it is. But you know what? One team that ended up doing pretty solidly overall at Portland was Stewart Haas Racing. Both of their two drivers ended up inside the top 10. And Riley Herbst, who ended up finishing 10th, he led the opening 15 laps before Justin Allgaier took over there, Rich.
Well, and I noted Custer for this week, another 6th place finish at a road course. This guy does not get enough credit for being a good road course racer.
That is very true. Cole Custer, even this week, he's plus 1,100 in order to outright win. And Riley Herbst, he's plus 5,000.
Yeah, no, there's no love for Herbst right now, man. And I don't know. He's shown speed in the past. I got to believe the team is feeling disappointed so far, considering how Custer has run and how he's run. But I will not be shocked if, we see the end of the season come around for Herbst.
That was the case last year when he did end up sneaking that win at Vegas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
interestingly enough, I'm looking at your lap leaders here.
Yeah,
I didn't realize SVG only led that few laps, man.
Yeah, less than Riley Herbst there overall. Only 4 drivers led laps. It just goes to show how dominant of a performance that Allgaier was putting on. He led 46 laps. Riley led just the opening 15, as mentioned. SVG ended up leading the 12, and then Sheldon Creed snuck off with 2 laps led as well.
Yep, and he's a decent road racer. I think people forget that. You gave me a little hat tip for the Ed Jones call. That was nice to see him have a nice finish. I was happy about that.
First career top 5 for Ed Jones as well.
Dinger had a heck of a run because, like you said, they wrecked in qualifying, started from the rear, backup car. So that was impressive. I did not know that Josh Williams finished 7th.
Yeah, his new best finish of the year at that, too.
I never would have guessed that. Not for him. Short track, yes. So no, or Portland, not so much.
Very much so. Hat tip to that 11 team. They're that 11 Colleague Racing team there with Josh Williams. They've been doing this the past couple of races where they've just been not qualifying too good or qualifying about mid-pack or lower. And then throughout the race, they just grind it out and end up scoring a solid finish either inside the top 10 or just outside the top
10. You mentioned Parker Kligerman. He had another top 10 race even after the setback. Parker Retzlaff, we don't talk about him enough, in my opinion. I feel like due to the equipment, he doesn't get the recognition he should, but he's a talented little driver, man.
That is for sure. He just keeps knocking off finishes here and there. And Jordan Anderson Racing, they've been about, like, say, the mid-pack team, but, like, amongst the top of the mid-pack drivers that could sometimes sneak off maybe even a top 5 finish if they're really on their game. But Parker Retzlaff in particular, he's just been throwing some results here and there.
Yep. I just wish we'd see him in some better equipment, man. I really do. Josh Bilicki was in some good equipment. We haven't gotten to see that very often. I had a little higher hopes. 12th place is not bad. But
he was running pretty good in top 5 for a good amount of the race there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was hoping more for that 5 through 8 range for him. So that was fun. Austin Hill, kind of a letdown considering where he's typically run on these road courses. Same with Sheldon Creed. Ryan Sieg had another nice run. You know, there's another driver. I got to wonder what kind of performances we'd get out of both the Sieg brothers if they were in JGR type equipment.
I do have to wonder about that too, but they're in the biggest Ford team in the Xfinity series by a number of cars. So it makes you wonder, why isn't Ford putting more support into them when they have that many cars for them?
And a 2-car Ford team, Stuart Haas, is blowing their doors off.
Exactly.
So, missed it. I don't want to skip this. Sammy Smith with another second place. Sammy Smith with a third place finish for the second week in a row. We've been waiting for him to come around. We were excited when he went to JRM, and he's been leaving us hungry. So maybe we're finally getting there, Sean.
Perhaps. Although this one, I know they had to fight for this one a little more so compared to the previous week, just because Sammy, he was running top 10 for He was running top 10, but more towards like the back half of the top 10. And then when the other drivers were having problems, he was slowly making his way up there quietly. And it was just very interesting to see that he ended up in the third position after all there, Rich.
But I like the fact they had to battle for it. Do you know what I'm saying? That to me tells me they're capable. They're trying to do all the things they're working on. They're improving the car as the race goes. I think that matters. So I've got a little asterisk next to Sammy Smith because I've been, he was up here for me and I've had to kind of move him. And now it's like, okay, I need to get him back in view here because he's one of the young guns that I really, if you would have pushed me to a corner, I would have told you Sammy Smith and Jesse Love are two of the most talented young drivers we've got out there right now. And neither of them have really lived up to my expectations so far this year.
Yeah, I do think though that Jesse Love, he at least has the win this year.
He does
so far, and credit to him because that 2-car the past couple of years has been close to a win, but not gotten it. But then they finally got that win. And Jesse Love, he's led in some races this year. He's had some good finishes. He's ran well. He just hasn't always closed out. This was like one of the few weeks where I wasn't really on Jesse Love as much just because I don't think he's as big on the road courses as, say, some of the other drivers in the field. But I will say that he has been running a little better than I was thinking this year.
I guess I'm not as impressed with the win because his teammate has dominated the plate racing and it was a plate race win. So I'm hoping to see some better performances at the Charlottes of the world, the Las Vegases of the world. And he has. He's shown some flashes there. We've definitely seen a little bit at the short tracks too. And to be fair, our CR equipment has been really, really good on the plate races and been kind of depending where we go. They've been good on the road courses, but they are not, I wouldn't put them on the same level as JRM or JGR at this point. Maybe, they're tier 1 and this is more like a tier 1.5, something like that. I think I'd put Stuart Haas ahead of RCR right now overall on speed.
Yeah, that's valid, I'd say. They're around the same level. Sometimes SHR, I think on average has been a little bit better than RCR.
I agree.
But I don't think the gap is that high.
No, it's close. I don't put SHR with Gibbs and JRM. I think they're a little better than RCR, but they're probably that same tier.
Yeah, I'd say that's valid. Even though, funny enough, we mentioned about Sheldon Creed there. He ended up getting the penalty, of course. That's the reason why he finished back there. He was fighting for the win, but then he just jumped the restart towards the end, and NASCAR tagged him for it.
He cannot get out of his own way, man. I mean, we hear about it in the Discord. Everybody's disappointed with him, and I keep telling folks, don't cut off your nose to spite your own face. He's had speed. He has background of speed. It was disappointing last year by his standards. It was disappointing the year before by his and the team standards. Yes, we expect more from this 18 car, but in all fairness, Sammy Smith didn't do much different than what we've seen from Sheldon Creed in this 18 car. We give Smith a little bit of a break because he's a little younger, less experienced. But we see, we were just talking about him at JRM. Creed's going to get one, and it will not shock. And honestly, he's 1,800 plus 1,800 this weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising just to see somebody who's shown a lot of flashes at road courses in particular just be that far down. But I guess that's all attributed to the fact he still has yet to win an Xfinity race.
True story. Well, let's get on to the news for the week here. We finally got some big news that we were waiting on, right? I don't want to talk this to death because you and I already talked it to death. Kyle Larson got his waiver. It's none. It's over. It's done with. I don't want to hear the discussion anymore. We can discuss the validity, why, the standard, but you and I were kind of in the same boat anyway on this. I don't think NASCAR would have done themselves any favors with the IndyCar crowd, with IndyCar, with NASCAR fans in general. What Larson did was beneficial to both racing groups, was beneficial to the racing community. The people that are all bent out of shape about it, I don't know if they're just sticklers for rules. I don't know if they can't see the big picture. I don't see the gain. The only gain I saw by not giving him a waiver is to point out how stupid the NASCAR point system is for the season championship. That is the only reason I could think of why it would make sense to not give him a waiver, especially after I found out that Grant Enfinger didn't get one when they didn't have sponsorship. Larson qualified. They attempted to have him in the car. That wasn't the case with Grant Enfinger. They straight up didn't come to the track because they didn't have sponsorship. To me, that is where the line is now set. I understand they say you got to attempt the race. It's not just qualifying. But to me, I think they've kind of set that precedent in some degree. Not to mention, we've got to have more of these. Both IndyCar, and I heard Joseph Newgarden wants to do it. We got to have these guys wanting to do it, Sean. It's going to be good for racing.
100% agree with what you were saying there, Rich. Overall, I think that the waiver rule, as it is, and I mentioned this last week, I think there needs to be changes, or it just needs to be gone, because the way that it's been officiated has just not been good at all.
So I listened to Corey LaJoie, and he had Brian Flores on, right? And they were talking. They both brought up a couple of points. LaJoie goes, look, for me, the spirit of the rule is what SVG did last year. We don't want a road course ringer coming in, winning Chicago, and then being like, oh, well, I'm in the championship standings now. It's like, that's what we don't want. He goes, we're talking about one of the biggest stars in our sport, one of the best racers of all time, doing one of the greatest races of all time. He goes, that's something different. That's not what this rule was about. And when he kind of teed it up that way, I was like, you know what, Corey, that is the most sane take I've heard, and I think it's valid. And Flores kind of expanded on that, saying, the whole idea is we want them showing up every week. He goes, now, if we don't want guys winning a couple races and then saying, I'm going to take 10 weeks off. He goes, that's not what's happening here. That's what the spirit of the rule is about. So between their 2 points, I think it rang home. I'm with you. Let's get some clarification on the rule or change the rule. Because as it stands right now, it's just kind of dumb.
Exactly. And overall, you mentioned it about the fact that they made every single attempt and effort in order to get Larson into the car. Larson was suited up. He got the helmet on and everything. He was ready to go. The race just didn't get back going.
Well, people are like, well, he chose to do Indy. You want him to get out of the car at Indy? You think that's normal? Well, he should have just left. I read today Hendrick spent about $3 million trying to make it happen. Arrow McLaren wants him to come back next year and try. Sponsors want, like, all the business aspect. We talk about the lack of money in the sport and teams not making money. Here it is, a guy brought more. I haven't seen a crowd at Indy like that in years, Sean. Years. That was an impressive crowd at Indy. We don't get a NASCAR race with a crowd like that. Charlotte was sold out again. People were hoping. I feel bad for the fans that didn't get to see Larson do both. We can't control the weather. I'm sorry. He was already at Indy. Run the 500, got all 500 miles in. So hindsight being 2020, I think he did the right thing anyway. But anyway, I said we weren't going to talk it to death, and here we are, Sean. We're in the same group. We're on the same page. It's done. It's over with. He's going to run for the championship. And like someone else said, how crappy would it have been that would have been the story the rest of the year? Well, if Larson had a waiver, he's actually your series leader right now. But since he doesn't, he's not eligible. Like, really, that's the conversation we wanted to have for the next 6 months?
Yeah, let's avoid that conversation. NASCAR did the right thing in the end. They got the call right, even though it was interesting that we saw Elton Sawyer say that it wasn't a unanimous decision.
Right. Yeah, well.
But majority ruled, Larson gets the waiver. Right. That's the end goal here.
And I think the competition committee that was upset about it, they're butthurt. They're butthurt that the Coke 600 isn't as big of a deal as the Indy 500. I honestly think that's what it is. And they're looking for something specific to basically out somebody that's one of theirs. But other news, Todd Gilliland, we mentioned, signed multi-year deal. We know McDowell's on the way out, so that was a big deal. Sean, if you want to go through the penalties, because some of these penalties just seem asinine to me, bro.
Well, to be fair, Rich, the penalty report is actually very, very short this week. Truck Series didn't get any penalties. Cup Series didn't get any penalties either. The only penalty was just in the Xfinity Series for Kyle Weatherman. He got fined $25,000 for violating Section 4.4 B and D of the NASCAR rulebook. That is basically saying that the penalty cites contact with another vehicle on pit road after the race, which is noted under Section 4.4.B. Basically, the whole context of this, because Fox did such an amazing job covering this and absolutely showing this, as in the fact they didn't show this at all. But after the race, Kyle Weatherman got into the back of Ryan Sieg's car on pit road there. And as we know, Rich, NASCAR does not tolerate any sort of contact on pit road after the race. because
That's a big
Weatherman,
no-no.
he was showing his frustration against Sieg because apparently Sieg got into Weatherman and that ruined his day, caused that accident there on the final lap. And
that's why he had the bad finish.
Yep, pretty much. And yeah, while they were too busy just showing commercials, doing the side-by-side over Shane Van Gisbergen's amazing drifting burnout there, they didn't even show this whole incident come into play either, too. So, total failure on Fox's part to not even show it.
Well,
Ridiculous.
Let's move on from the weekend. Let's hit some of our paint schemes, because I got to admit, there's some fire paint schemes this week, Sean.
Well, let's just actually, before that, let's quickly get through some of the other stories there.
Oh, my bad. I totally snagged. I buried the lead because I'm excited about this one news story.
Yeah. Brendan Butterbean Queen. He's going to get 2 more races with Tricon Garage at Nashville and Kansas. What do you think? How do you think that Butterbean's going to do with these 2 tracks there, Rich?
You know me, man. If it's a Tricon track and or a Tricon truck and it's a young, talented driver I like, I'll be in on it, man. I know he's got more of a short track kind of thing background, but look, Nashville on the concrete, Kansas, I'm excited for it. I think I will not be shocked if he has another top 10, top 5 finish.
Yeah, I think Nashville in particular is definitely exciting for a driver like Butterbean as well, considering his background too.
Yep, I agree.
Now, this next story is kind of a sad and somber one to see, but, we knew it might eventually happen. But NASCAR Race Hub will host its last ever show on FS1 on June 11th. By this time next week when we're doing the show, it's going to be no more, Rich.
I used to love Race Hub back in the day. It's been tough to watch more recently. And I don't really know why, because they have Todd Bodine's on and does a good job. Brad Keselowski's on, does a good job. David Reagan does a good job. I don't know if it's time. I don't know if it's too much. I'm so old. I remember RPM Tonight, right? And I remember ESPN getting rid of RPM Tonight, and that was a real bummer. Dave Despain's gotten older. Robin Miller passed. Wind Tunnel was amazing. We don't have a lot of these sports shows based on racing, and there's always been a good one to turn to. I'm hoping something steps up. Maybe it's on Amazon. And I'm not shocked, because with Fox losing the amount of races they are and the TV coverage getting split up, it's going to be tough. One of the knocks on RPM Tonight back in the day was it was a magazine show, they called it. And they didn't want that, or they couldn't have that. ESPN didn't have all the coverage, but they were covering all these different things for NASCAR and racing. I'm bummed about it, but I'll be honest, for fantasy and betting standpoint, it really wasn't on the radar. Give me the interviews during practice and qualifying.
Yeah, true, but hopefully they'll at least maintain the radioactive segments online on YouTube or in some other fashion.
Fun. Yeah, those were fun.
They got to keep that going at least. I mean, come on.
Radioactive is pretty good. Radioactive is pretty good. And hey, I know a lot of people may not feel this way. I love Mike Joy. I think Mike Joy is a gem. I love him on Barrett Jackson. I'm glad they have him. I wish Mike Joy went to one of the other new TV partners for NASCAR, because I feel like they're doing a better job. The Amazons, the CWs. I'm trying to think of the other one that's covering next year. I feel like they're doing a better job with the talent, and it's been poor Mike Joy and really Larry Mack kind of on their own. Granted, Kevin Harvick was better this year, and Boyer brings a little bit of something, but there's been a little something missing. We were talking earlier, Bob Jenkins and Benny Parsons and Ned Jarrett, and I don't know, man, that was quite the trio. And I liked it early on with Joy and Larry Mack and Mike Joy. Mike Joy has forgotten more about cars and racing than I will ever learn. I firmly believe that.
He's a walking whole encyclopedia of NASCAR knowledge right there. And
knowledge, dude.
Yeah, car and NASCAR knowledge.
Racing and car knowledge. It is. If I could sit down and have a 2-hour conversation with him, I'd just be taking notes.
Oh, yeah. So for context, by the way, in case anybody was listening to this, this is just because Mike Joy came out and said that he intends to return to the Fox booth in 2025. They have not finalized who the Fox roster is yet with the new deal, but Joy said he is intending to return. So there you go for the context there, there for anybody that was wondering, how did we suddenly get to Mike Joy? There we go.
That's
all right. Now we're actually at the part you were trying to get us to there, Rich. Paint scheme time there. Scheme. Let's get started on this. And how about you start us off there, Rich? What do you got for us?
Well, I love that orange Kubota #1. Give me Ross Chastain. I know we've seen it before. We've talked about it before, but I just think it's a sexy looking car. I really do. So give me that guy. And I know this is an oldie but a goodie, but we haven't seen it much this year. And it was almost like a nostalgia feel when I came across it as I was looking at it. It's a little variation of what we've seen from him, at least from years past. It's common to what we've seen this year. Denny Hamlin in the plain old FedEx scheme. I can't remember the last race we actually saw him in the FedEx scheme there, Sean. So give me Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain this week.
Yeah, good choices there overall. Both of these schemes we've seen both earlier in the season. We saw the Kubota scheme. I believe this was at Phoenix where they took this image there. Very nice looking car. Orange, so we know it's a Rich Maletto trademark for liking it there. Had to get that in there. But the Denny Hamlin FedEx scheme, though, I've always liked how the FedEx scheme looked this year, how they made that purple space separate just for the number 11 to really make it pop there, and the FedEx logo. I mean, the FedEx logo you see on the hood, that is very symbolic of NASCAR for all of these years, just having the FedEx car on track since the 2000s pretty much there. And it's nice to see it still going. And just the white and purple there and orange, it's a classic combination of colors that just works there, Rich. It just works.
It really does. And I'm bummed that we won't see it. It was such a common staple, on the screen. It was one of the few cars that rarely changed over the years. I'm so old. I remember when you only had 3, 4, maybe 5 races of a different sponsor, right? So you didn't have to go have 15 different shirts per driver. Nowadays, you have no idea what the cars are going to look like from race to race.
I also remember regarding FedEx about how they used to have all their different subdivisions and sub-brands on the car throughout all the years, and that would just keep the car the same old black FedEx scheme, but just change like the secondary color towards like, say, blue for shipping or red
green for ground.
Yeah, green for ground. I always thought that was very, very cool back in the day, too. I wish we could see that again.
I don't disagree.
All right. Now, going into the 2 paint schemes that I chose this week, this first one is a newer one here. We got Chase Elliott's Napa Gold filter screen. I always like a good, sleek black car there, but I love the contrast with the gold. I love myself seeing some gold here, too. And just the way that the sponsor space is used up is very, very effective with the Chase Elliott car. It's very similar to his main Napa Auto Parts scheme for this year. It's just the style of it has been very, very cool. It'll just basically pop out and stand out. I can imagine. I hope that gold is like reflective paint or chrome paint or something like that. That would be really
the number. I think is. I could be wrong, but I think the number is.
That'd be so cool, man. Now, as for the other paint scheme choice I made, it's actually a paint scheme that I don't believe we've seen this year, but this driver has run this particular paint scheme in the past years. Joey Logano's Auto Trader scheme. So we got ourselves the signature blue Auto Trader scheme. We got the flashes of orange from the Auto Trader logo, the orange numbers, the white and orange stripes on the sides there. Very, very cool looking car is always there, Rich. And I love the fact that the Auto Trader logo on the side is very nice and big. And even on the hood as well, it's just very, very effective, Rich. Very good combination.
It is. If this was what, like we were saying, how sponsors would stay on a car for a while, this would be a good looking car for the majority of the year type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. I know I prefer the old school method of having the car numbers be in the middle, but if the numbers are going to be used like this, though, and they're going to make use of good effectiveness of the space, though, I'm actually not against the numbers being like that if it's done effectively.
I agree with you, especially when they do it so well. You don't notice how far forward the numbers are. Do you know what I mean? Because of how the spacing is. It looks weird when they have that big open space. Like if they didn't have the Auto Trader logo there, it would look odd.
Yeah, so maybe, as we've said in weeks past, maybe some of these drivers with these paint schemes we keep pointing out have good days. We saw just that last week too, so we didn't call the winner, but we did have 3 of the paint schemes that we picked last week ended up finishing inside the top 10, including you pointing out the Austin Dillon paint scheme there last week. So
That's right. That's right. We do have
there
that roll
you go.
going. I forgot about that.
He ended up being the top Chevy. So
right. You know, and I really do like that Chase Elliott one. So, well, let's get on to this week's race. I've been thinking maybe we need to change Thunder Hour to Thunder and a Half Hour. I don't know, but that seems to be the trend. So I'm trying to be a little bit better here.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. First road course race since COTA. Look, we haven't. Last year's Sonoma race Cup race only had 2 cautions. That had to be the stage cautions. You're only going to have a handful of lap leaders. Most of the laps are going to be led by 1 or 2 drivers, period. So not only do we want the dominators with the lap leaders, we want drivers that are going to finish in the top 5. Like, that's really what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, to put it simply, you want to get those dominators because there likely is going to be a dominator or 2 just leading most of the races this weekend. And you just want to get place differential where you can, because you can find it in some circumstances. We've seen it before where some drivers will climb up through the field at least steadily over time, and by the end, they could even get something like a top 15 or a top 10 if they're really in the right position there. But you want to also make sure you get those drivers that could just end up finishing well for the price.
Yeah, I went back and counted. In the Xfinity race, we only had 2 drivers that moved up 10 spots or more. Or I'm sorry, more than 10 spots. 1 driver moved up 10 spots. In the Cup Series, we had a few more. I want to say 4 drivers moved up 10 spots or more. Other than that, you're hoping to gain 5-6 spots. Like you said, we got to, Brad Keselowski being 7,000, being a potential top 15, for example, for me is someone that's just kind of slightly on the radar, because I feel like the points performance could match the money, to your point, right? Oftentimes we can get away with top loading the lineup, chasing those dominators, because the top 2 or 3 scorers are going to score 70, 75, 65, 80 points. You're probably not going to get that this week outside of your race winner or top 3 finisher, because there's not that many laps to lead. So the bonus points aren't going to be there. The most you're probably going to get from a place differential is that 10 points. And that's going to be hard to find. It's not going to be low hanging fruit like we see at a place like Charlotte or Las Vegas or something, right? So we're going to have to be laser hunting this week, I think, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, unless we somehow get some surprises in qualifying where you'll have a top driver end up being the chalky play, and then
like Dinger
in
last
some sense, you're going to have to use them.
Like Dinger last week was a perfect example, right?
Yep.
Because their qualifying spot was actually at the back because of wreck and not getting the actual time. It's a little different.
Actually, no. Technically, his position was 10th.
Oh, there, my bad. So then he wasn't.
Starting position.
No, he wasn't a good example then. My bad. I thought he wrecked during qualifying. I didn't realize he took time. So
yeah, because that happened in the basically the final round of qualifying.
So they had already qualified. Yeah. So that's what we need. We need something like that to take place. So we've covered the rules package. I'm not too worried about that. You want to go through the park timers for the week here?
Yeah, we'll go pretty quick with this there. Xfinity has a big list like it usually does. We have Garrett Smithley in the 4 for JD Motorsports. Excuse me if I screw up this name, but Thomas Annunziata is also driving the other JD Motorsports car, the number 6. Alex LeBay with SS Greenlight Racing driving the 07 car. The other SS Greenlight car this week is Brad Perez in the 14. That could be a little interesting for place differential there, potentially, with those 2 drivers. Now, this one I know you're excited about there, Rich, and I have some excitement about this one, too. But Boris Said is back in the number 17 car for Hendrick Motorsports there, Rich.
I'm pumped about this. He did try to qualify for the Roval last year. They had an oil line problem. He did not make the field. This is the same car, same team that Kyle Larson dominated this very event in last year. Look, road racing in NASCAR has gotten better because of Boris Said. He has 5 top 5 finishes out of 17 events in the Cup Series on these road courses. He can do it. I know he's getting up there in age, but this is the level he still can do it. This is the car he can still do it with. Greg Ivy's on the pit box. Sign me up. I have no problem going a little crazy on Boris Said this weekend.
Now, would you take a bet on Boris Said, considering that his odds are plus 6,000, Rich?
100%. Put him in the article. I think if you wanted to bet win top 5, top 10, I'd support that. I really would.
Nice call there. Now, we mentioned about the 2 Joe Gibbs Racing drivers earlier. You have Ty Gibbs in the 19, which the main driver of the 19 this year was supposed to be Eric Almirola, who won this race last year. So something to keep in mind there. John Hunter Nemechek is in the 20, as mentioned earlier, another driver that we have to keep on our radar. Now, Sam Hunt Racing, they're only running 1 car this week compared to 2, but that single car, though, is being ran by Ed Jones, who we noted got the top 5 finish at Portland this last week. Austin Green is back in the number 32 for Jordan Anderson Racing. Sage Karam, he's back again, but this time with Joey Gase Motorsports in the 35. The equipment is not as good as last week. You have Preston Pardis in the 50, who is a driver that can get some decent results when the equipment is behind him, but I'm not sure I could trust the equipment there. And then you have Josh Bilicki being back again, but this time with DGM Racing instead of Joe Gibbs Racing compared to last week in the 92.
Little side note, I'll dig into it for you a little more. Eric Almirola is supposed to race a few races this year. I read a report that apparently there was some fisticuffs taking place with Mr. Bubba Wallace during a JGR meeting, or a Toyota meeting. So I will find out more about that, because if you remember correctly, Almirola was listed on the entrant list by NASCAR, and then all of a sudden it changed to Gibbs. Sean was the one that called me out on that because I had missed that. But I found out a little bit that there's been some grumblings there with Almirola and JGR and a fallout.
Yeah, just rumblings, but we haven't seen any public statements about it.
No.
Still to this day, which
correct
is very interesting to consider. But
yes.
This may or may not be true. We don't know for sure, but until something more comes out about that, we can only just speculate there.
Like I said, I'll do some digging, Sean. I promise.
Yep. And now, as for the Cup Series race, we only have 4 different part-timers there. We have Kaz Grala in the 15, it for Rick Ware. AJ Allmendinger is in the number 16 Kaulig racing car. And then we have the 2 supercars racing drivers. Will Brown is driving in a 3rd RCR car, the number 33. And then you have Cam Waters in a 3rd RFK racing car, the number 60 there, Rich.
I'm really interested in both, but I'm particularly interested in Waters in the RFK machine because of what we talked about with Chris Buescher in the past, because of what we've seen RFK doing lately on speed. I'm really interested in these 2 drivers. I'm not happy with their price points, but I'm interested.
Yeah, they are very intriguing. I do want to see more data through qualifying. But if you did want to take a bet on them, however, though, it's interesting the difference between the 2, because Will Brown, he's at 28-1 to win, and Cam Waters, he's at 65-1 to win.
Which is crazy to me because I would have had it the other way around, but I'm not the one setting the lines. Pricing, they're only $100 or $200 priced differently, so those odds seem odd. But here again, like you said, we'll have a better idea come practice.
For sure. But if you wanted to maybe put a $1 bet or something on either of these 2 drivers in case they pull an SVG, I would not be against that. That is for sure.
$1 to win 35 or 65, sign me up. Or 28 or 65, sign me up. Reminder, if you want to catch any and all of our content here from me or Sean or anyone else, please head over to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button in the far top right-hand corner. We have a package for just about anybody. You just want to follow us for racing? I can't lie. I'm not going to hate on that. $40 gets you 12 months of coverage and everything else. We've got monthly packages if that's more your thing, but I'm telling you the price savings is worth the annual package. We've got everything under the sun for sports. As Jeff Mann said on the podcast, even if you just want to be a better sports fan, we have the tools for you. We have the knowledge. I stand by all of our staff members and actually all of our members there in our Discord channels. We have a lot of educated sports fans that play along with us and they're in the Discord and drop lineups, please join us. Give us a shout. Hit the like and subscribe button to the YouTube channel, but head over to fantasyguru.com. If you want the all-in, the special deal on everything in the kit and caboodle, hit up support@fantasyguru.com. Well, Sean, should we get into our drivers for the week? We should knock these out pretty quick because there was a lot of overlap this week.
You know, Rich, to be honest with you, I did not actually get the chance to look at your list of drivers until this very moment to know that we overlapped this much there. But I figured it'd be a nice surprise, and to see we're really overlapping a lot this week is kind of crazy overall.
Yeah, I know. I went in there because I was like, well, he's on all the same guys. Fine. I was like, this will be quick, I guess.
Yeah, this will be pretty quick. We have the same 3 drivers, but there are top price drivers to watch. So let's just name and discuss the 3. Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, Ty Gibbs there, Rich. I really like all 3 of these calls overall there. MTJ, we know this is his best road course track by far. He has multiple wins at Sonoma. He's the defending race winner. Chase Elliott, he's ran very well at Sonoma in the past. He's usually a strong road course racer. We don't have to question his ability there. And then young Ty Gibbs, who we know has shown some proficiency on the road courses there as well, driving in Joe Gibbs Racing equipment. We know that JGR, and this also goes for Truex as well, who's also in JGR equipment, they tend to run very, very well at this track. Would not shock me at all to see any of these 3 be competitive.
Not at all. And Ty Gibbs is doing double duty, which I always love. To me, that's a little bit of a feather in the hat, little notch. I listed mine in a different order simply because I feel they're all very, very comparable. I don't love that Truex is the reigning champ from this previous race, so that makes me sour slightly on him just because we don't see a lot of back-to-back winners these days. Back-to-back weeks and even back-to-back race events, right? Chase Elliott and Ty Gibbs, I think, are bargains because I do put them on the same level, and they're $1,300 less, $1,500 less than Truex. So that's the only reason I kind of lean that way. But I'm in 100% agreement on everything you said, Sean.
Yeah, truly, especially when you look towards the average finish of all drivers at Sonoma since 2021. Elliott is the leading driver there with an average finish of 5.0, and he's one of only 2 drivers to finish in the top 10 in the last 3 Sonoma races. The other being Ross Chastain, who I think we're going to be talking about pretty soon there as well, Rich. But here's something interesting about Ty Gibbs I did want to mention. The last 3 road course events that the Cup Series has visited, Ty Gibbs has 3 straight top 5 finishes going into this week at road courses.
Not shocked. He looked like one of the cars to beat at COTA. He really did. And something I want to mention about Chase Elliott, if you go look at all the, Truex has been really good here. Out of 17 Sonoma races, he has like 11 top 5s. That's pretty decent, okay? Or 11 top 10s, I mean. That's pretty decent. In 7 Sonoma races, Chase has 5.
Yeah.
So, to me, those things matter. When I see a high percentage of top 10, top 5 finishes, that matters a lot. To me, that is a driver thing more than a car thing.
And the crazy thing is that if you take out Chase Elliott's 2019 race, where he was out due to engine failures, he's only had 1 finish outside the top 10, and that was his very first appearance at this track.
Right. I don't even remember what it was, but I don't think it was a bad finish. Wasn't it like 15th or 16th or something?
21st.
21st, okay. So it wasn't great, but speaking of, you did mention Ross. So let's talk about the next group, because I tell you what, the first guy in our next group, you've already talked about him. You've already reminded me how I should maybe be a little warmer on him this week, but we have them in the same order: Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, and Kyle Busch.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Buescher, that is a no-brainer pick considering how crazy consistent that he is on road course events. The last 19 road course races, dating back to 2021, 18 top 20 finishes, and 11 top 10 finishes. And also, he's the only driver in the field since the next gen car has been a thing in 2022. He's finished top 5 in both Sonoma races there, Rich. I mean,
Right.
he knows how to really finish and close out races well. He knows how to put himself in the fold. And he really needs a win considering his playoff position. And also, RFK has been hot with Brad Keselowski there. And Buescher, when Brad's missed the top 3, Buescher's been right there in the hunt instead.
Well, and not only that, Buescher could have had a win if it wasn't for the Reddick overdriving, right? That led to Brad's only win so far, right? So, I mean, between the two, they've been right there. And Brad has come out and said, Chris, don't change your driving style. It's going to come. And he really is. This is a great fit for him. Ross has also been surprisingly better than I thought here. And when you look at his price point, I think he's underpriced. Kyle Busch, for me in this group, is way underpriced. Like, I think he is crazily underpriced at 7,700 on DK for a guy that has won here. Honestly, his top 5s and top 10s are on par with Martin Truex. And I understand a lot of those races were at JGR, but he's had good finishes the last 2 years.
Yeah, and you even want to mention the JGR equipment. Let's not forget, Kyle was the runner-up in this race last year. He finished second.
That's right. That's in RCR equipment. So I don't know where the pricing came. This Kyle, everybody's got him in a slump and it's done and over with or something. The pricing, the odds are just outlandish at this point.
Yeah. If there's any track where driver ability comes into play and isn't about the car as much, Sonoma is one of those few tracks where driver ability comes into play, and this is a really good track for Kyle. Out of all the road courses, this probably is Kyle's best road course in order to really use him this week. Definitely worth the consideration. Love his price on DraftKings there. He's my go-to pick if I need somebody under the 8K range.
Yep.
On FanDuel, he's a flat 9K, which is pretty solid. He's just below Buescher, who is at 9,500. Then we mentioned Ross. He's the cheapest of the 3 drivers we talked about, 8,200 on FanDuel as well there, Rich.
All are underpriced. In my opinion. The sleepers and bargains, we're a little bit different here. I think both of us are probably going to be looking at practice. I have no problems with Sean's picks here. We both have Justin Haley, which, shocker, both of us love the free square. I'm okay with Kaz Gralla. The reason I'm okay with Kaz Gralla, Rick Ware equipment has been okay. It really has been better than I thought. He's only 5,100. He is the second cheapest driver on the entire slate. And oh, by the way, Kaz Gralla was a road course ringer for years before they started putting him into more full-time rides in Xfinity and some Cup equipment. So I love the fact of his price at 5,100. I don't care where he starts. I think he can finish anywhere near where he starts. He's going to get that same. As long as the equipment holds up, if he qualifies practice 20th, he's going to finish around there. If he qualifies practice around 15th, he's going to finish around there, assuming the equipment holds up. I'm willing to roll the dice and go that route. I just can't get over Brad Keselowski being 7K, Sean. He's a top 15 driver here. Nothing great, nothing amazing, but
Rich, I'm just going to tell you this about Brad K. But if you thought that price line was crazy on DraftKings, you have not seen the FanDuel price.
I did. I almost pooped myself. I was like, what are you guys doing? I mean, the hate for Brad K at this point is astronomical. And I'm like, y'all do remember that race where he and Kyle Busch were like door banging, right? And Marcus Ambrose came involved. And then, no, that was a different race. But they were door banging at Watkins Glen. Yeah. I know it's not the same track, but it's not like the guy can't get around that. I'm like, I went back and looked at Sonoma finishes. Even in the last 5 years, I think the worst was 18th. Like, he's typically like 13th, 10th, 13th to 18th. Like, that's a top 15 driver, in my opinion. For $5,800 on FanDuel or $7,000 on DraftKings, like, what are we doing?
He's cheaper than Todd Gilliland and Carson Hocevar on FanDuel.
Whatever, man. Whatever. Don't blame me for the pricing is all I'm saying.
That is absolutely crazy. If he gets like a mid-pack qualifying position, forget about it. I think we have to use him at that point there.
Right.
But you know what? I like all your calls here. I don't mind the Casgrala call as well, especially we know Rick Ware Racing Equipment has definitely stepped up. Remember, he also raced at Coda. He ended up getting a solid finish out of that particular track well.
He did.
He was 27th, although he did lose a little bit of place differential, considering the salary in mind for Grala in most races. I'd say that's not a bad call still, even if he loses a position or two. And as for my sleepers and bargains list, I have Justin Haley listed as well. I'm just going to say it right now. Haley is my favorite value pick of the week, but bar none, without question, for Sonoma. And I have Bubba Wallace just because he's a driver that he's in good equipment. We know road course racing isn't his top forte, you could say, but he has been actually getting that better enough to the point where he can compete for top 15s. And if he ends up getting a good feel for the car, maybe even top 10, and for the price, I'm willing to take a chance on that. And then this last one, I feel like I am going to have to explain a little bit to you, Rich, because it's Ryan Preece.
I like Preece, man. I like Preece. I was hoping he would be more than what he's been so far. I wanted him to get a full-time ride. But I am curious for your logic behind him for this week.
Just overall, when it comes to a lot of the drivers that are like under 7K or heck even under 6K, not a lot of them have really a decent amount of pedigree in order to justify the fact that they could at least finish above their starting position. And one driver that comes to mind that is able to do that, and especially with the equipment in mind, is Ryan Preece. And he scored a top 15 finish in this exact track last year. The road course events, he ends up generally finishing ahead of his start position. He's done that almost all year long. 5,700 on DraftKings. I feel the price is a little too low there. 3,800 on FanDuel, still a little too low for my liking there, when I feel like he's been giving performance of a driver that should be at least like mid 6K, maybe even pushing it to 7K overall, Rich.
I don't disagree with any of that logic at all. Hitting on some of our bets. Look, truth be told, I really like Sean's bets. I'm fully supportive of 2 or 3 of the names he's got listed that I don't. I really want to see practice because I'm very torn. There's a whole group of drivers in that 500 to 800 range that, in my opinion, all are I don't want to say equal, but kind of in the same group as far as ability to win the race. So I have no problem with them. A lot of the odds I went with are more on the higher side, just because I feel like the drivers can outdo the odds currently, or we'll probably see them come down come practice time. Chase Elliott at plus 850, 8.5 to 1. Ty Gibbs at 7.5 to 1. I know Mike McDowell hasn't been great here, and I know he struggled, but I just feel like something is coming with McDowell. At 14 to 1, I think he's an interesting shot. I could easily pivot away from this entirely come practice time. And man, Joey Logano's odds at 45 to 1 seem ridiculous. He doesn't have a win here, but his top 5s and top 10s are in the same ballpark as Chase Elliott's percentage-wise, and Kyle Busch and Truex. I mean, he rattles them off. So I'm not buying the 45 to 1.
Especially when he's finished top 5 in 2 of the last 3 Sonoma races there.
Right.
For Logano. 3rd last year, too.
So I don't get it.
I agree with all your choices there, Rich. They're all good calls, I say. I think that the McDowell call, I know you said you were 100% confident about it. I'd say he actually does have a fair chance of actually potentially hitting it. If there's any track where I think McDowell could have a good chance of running,
this is it.
This is one of those tracks, especially for the odds. He's finished top 10 in the 2 next-gen races with at Sonoma with Front Row Motorsports, so I think he certainly has the pedigree there too. And as for my list, I have Martin Truex Jr. plus 550, Christopher Bell at plus 750, Chris Buescher at plus 1400, and then Logano rounds out my list. He's the long shot bet that I'm aiming for most to hit there. Plus,
dude, I'll put a buck on it for $45. I mean, and you know what? If nothing else, bet him for a top 5. Take the plus 220 or whatever it would be for a top 5.
Yeah, for Joey Logano, it's actually plus 550 for a top 5. That's even better.
That's even better. I mean, so we're in agreement there. Like I said, there was a lot of overlap with us this week, a ton, because I could have easily copied your bets and been 100% confident with it, but I like to change it up. We like to educate people a little bit, right? So I wanted to make sure we had a couple of differences. We're both really feeling, I think, Chase Elliott to some degree in Truex. So this will be kind of in Busher, really. So this will be kind of interesting. Why don't you lead us off with your DFS picks?
All right, so my DFS core 4, it's consistent between DK and FD this week. Martin Truex Jr., 10,500 on DraftKings, 14,000 on FanDuel. He's the most expensive driver on both sites, but I think he is pretty well worth it just based on the history. Chase Elliott, 9,300 on DraftKings, 11,000 on FanDuel. I love the price on both sites because he still leaves some cap flexibility while able to maintain top 5 or better performance. Chris Buescher, 8,600 on DraftKings, 9,500 on FanDuel. I mentioned it before. I love Buescher's consistency at road courses. And then, although qualifying can very easily sway who my top value pick is going to be in the long run, I have my eye on Justin Haley, 6,400 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel. This is a very qualifying dependent track, so a lot of this is subject to change. But for now, I got these 4.
And I'm in 100% agreement, subject to change. Really, the ones I have listed here is more because I have them in the same tier as some of the higher priced guys, and I just think they're priced a little under. So for me on DraftKings, I'm Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin at 9,300, 9,200. I think they're in the same ballpark as a Martin Truex, and they're $1,000, $1,300 cheaper. So for right now, again, come qualifying, practice probably changes a bit, but they're firmly kind of something I'm going to build around because it's going to give me options for more money. Kyle Busch, another 7,700, just seems stupidly cheap, and Kaz Grall at 5,100. With that pricing, that gives you some flexibility on what you can do with your lineup. You could go another sleeper value pick and go top end. You could make a couple of changes and get Truex in with these other guys. So there's a couple of ways to do it. On FanDuel, these are just guys that I just think are sillily underpriced. Denny Hamlin at 8,500, Daniel Suarez at 8,000, Brad Keselowski at 5,800, and Will Brown at 5,500. I'd rather have BK at 5,800. I have more confidence, even though I think Will Brown's probably a better road racer. Similar equipment. No, Will Brown's in the RCR equipment.
Yeah. Cam Waters is the other RFK entry.
Yeah,
he's about 100 more than Brad on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think he was 5,900. So that's the other reason I was leaning Brad. But Will Brown in RCR equipment. Look, Kyle Busch ran well in it. Dillon's never been much of a road course racer, but he's actually been okay considering. So again, this will change with qualifying. I felt like there's a ton of savings to be had this week if you want it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to play around with the different sorts of lineup combinations this week, just because you have different sorts of drivers with different skill sets priced all over the place this week.
Oh, for sure. Well, Sean, I think that about does it for everything, right? We've covered the bets. We've covered the DFS. You are covering Xfinity and Cup this week. The trucks are off. I appreciate your help with that because there's a bunch of stuff dropping for the football draft guide, and I've been blessed with some additional work there. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it, Sean. Please go to fantasyguru.com. You get all the info on the NFL draft guide. There is no other item like it out there. Not on any other fantasy sites anywhere else. It is unique to Fantasy Guru. We stand by it. All the staff is contributing to it, all of it. I mean, everybody has got something going on with it. You want to get inside man's head, there's all sorts of articles he's dropping. Ray's got stuff dropping. Phil's got stuff dropping. Sean, you're helping out with all sorts of stuff on the back end. We've got all the podcasts that are going to be coming with it that you'll be anchoring. Tons of stuff. Go over to fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe button. Check out the different packages. If you want the whole kit and caboodle, email support@fantasyguru.com. Tell them Jeff Mann sent you. Ask for the special promo on the all-in package. If you're here for the racing and you just want some racing content, hey, Please sign up for the Game Time MVP all-in. $39.99 gets you 12 months. That gets you the rest of this year, the start of next year. It's 12 months from the time you sign up. You can't beat the pricing on that. Look, on behalf of Sean Engel, you can find on Twitter at Sean, spelled the right way, SEANE247.
Yes.
Please give him a follow over there. Hit us up in Discord. You can hit up Sean or myself in Discord by tagging in our names, Sean Engel or Rich Maletto. You can find me on the Xbox machine at Fantasy Bosco. On behalf of Sean and everyone at Fantasy Guru and the Elite Plus Network, thank you for enjoying the Race Guru Thunder Hour. Until next time, peace.